Broadcasting live from atop the Rocky Mountains, the crossroads of the West. You are listening to the Liberty Roundtable Radio Talk Show.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, I want to talk about Operation Fishbowl for a minute. Many of you probably don't even know what it is. There's so many government operations, you'll never keep track. So, don't feel bad if you don't know what it is. It's the 1962 U.S. high-altitude nuclear tests that lit up the sky, baby. Yeah, Operation Fishbowl was a series of, quote, U.S. high-altitude nuclear tests conducted back in 62 as part of the larger Dominique test program, right? It was aimed at understanding how nuclear detonations will affect space. The tests, including the well-known starfish detonation, were conducted over the Pacific Ocean. And basically it was an EMP, and they wanted to see how it would affect, missiles and affect different things. And these experiments helped shape modern understanding of the nuclear effects in space, and then affected downstream a lot of these nuclear agreements to say, hey, you better not, punch off nukes and everything else. There's all kinds of examples in history. 1859, I'll give you that little tidbit to go chase down for those of you who want to learn. There's magnetic storms that come from the sun. There's magnetic fields around the earth. In other words, everything is electrically charged, and the magnetic field of the earth prevents a lot of these solar flares and a lot of these things. But whether it's man-made or God-ordained, the fact is an EMP could be very dangerous to the United States. And so, Dr. Bradley, I don't know when or what or how, but if Americans push back too hard and demand the truth on very many topics, or there's a big sea change in the country, for example, to jettison the direction we're headed, which is a communist socialist marriage, if you will, then they will blow the thing up. They'll take us to war. They'll do something about food and starve us out. They'll create an EMP and, take out the power. At some point, I predict they'll do an EMP. Somebody, when I say they, I don't know who, somebody in the world will do an EMP, and eventually we'll kind of go back to the dark ages. I don't know when that's going to happen. My guess is it will be real, though. And I know people kind of debate back and forth how real or fake or whatever it is. I'm convinced it's real, Doctor, and I'm convinced that at some point we could be blasted back to the 18th century again.
Well, you might recall, of course, maybe you don't, 1962, but we had some transistor things and stuff like that. Our advent of the solid state devices it was very early how we were doing things in terms of widespread availability. The EMPs are a high amplitude, short duration spike, like a big static discharge, if you want to think of it that way. Only a very much more powerful. It is
think about when you walk across a carpet and then you touch something and you get shocked. It's like that on steroids, right?
It is. And the fact of the matter is, back in the days of vacuum tubes and, our old electronics, it had very little effect on it. But with something that's these integrated circuits and everything that we have, everything from your wristwatch to your car computer to your refrigerator to your air conditioning in your thermostat, and certainly to our military weaponry. Now, I dealt in this world quite a bit 40 some years ago, and it was on our minds a lot because a nuclear device that's detonated at altitude sets off this short duration spike that enters the devices that are out there, and it basically destroys them. Your radio communications, your computers, your everything that has an integrated circuit in it now would be affected unless you've got a Faraday shield around them, they call them, where they basically put the spike to ground. It doesn't get to the device. But if you've got a connection, say from an outside line, unless it's a fiber line, fiber does not basically transmit these EMPs. Fiber uses light instead of electrical impulses. But the fact of the matter is, if you've got an electric wire coming to your home from outside to provide power to your refrigerator or your air conditioning or your heater or whatever, our heaters are largely solid state devices driven too. So everything that Sam's talking about being driven back to the dark ages, if we shut down all of those things, in some instant, I mean, your wristwatch wouldn't even work on your wrist. You wouldn't be able to use your computer. You can't hear your radio. And as clear back in 1962, we were doing these tests to see, and they have some pretty good data. I mean, and
Yeah, how
there's
bad it will be.
yeah, there's some. I mean, if there were three detonations over the United States at a certain altitude, it would take out our East Coast, our West Coast, and it'd take out the Midwest. So over, Chicago area or something like that. Or so we could literally be paralyzed in the information world with three nukes that were detonated at altitude and caused
Yeah.
these spikes.
And it might not even be our enemies that do it with a nuke. It might be the sun that can send out these electromagnetic, pulses as well. I don't know if you know, back in 1859, it was called the Carrington event, and it was the most powerful geomagnetic storm ever recorded, ladies and gentlemen. And it affected all kinds of things with telegraphs and everything else back in the day. And now we're so dependent on this technology for our medical care, for our heating and our cooling, for our transportation, we're dependent on it for everything, ladies and gentlemen. So there you have it. I thought that was interesting and just thought I'd bring that to your attention. People can laugh and act like there's nothing to this, but I'm telling you, there is. And we'll be talking about preparedness more and more on this program, about how to get prepared, about what to do about some of this stuff. What do you do about it? What do you feel like your hands are tied? Government knows it's a serious problem, but virtually does nothing about it. They're too busy attacking Marjorie Taylor Greene and Thomas Massey to do anything productive. That's the sad part. Final story of the hour I want to highlight. Health Secretary RFK Jr. personally instructed the CDC to abandon its long-standing viewpoint that, hey, vaccines do not cause autism. Now, they're attacking him relentlessly for that, but what he says is very simple. He said, hey, there's gaps in scientific vaccine research, and therefore, you can't say they don't cause vaccines because we don't have proof they don't. And they're saying, well, he's ignoring a larger point. Vaccines save lives. Well, that can be debated as well. They can save lives. They can also take lives. And if they're so confident that it saves lives, then just abolish the 1986 Vaccine Injury Compensation Fund and make the vaccine companies, take care of business. Let them be liable for their actions, and we'll see, how many lives they save or how many lawsuits they end up getting. This is a very interesting tidbit, but I commend Bobby Kennedy for telling the truth. We don't have proof they don't cause. We don't have proof they do, they claim, but we don't have proof they don't either. And that is his quintessential point. And I think he's right. And I think it's the start of some truth telling, Doctor.
Well, it's interesting to me that I'm pretty confident that when God ordained birth and, the propagation program from Earth for Earth and mortality, that children are not born vaccine deficient. I mean, okay, so what has changed since 1986? And it has been the vaccine schedule, where the childhood vaccination schedules, that you get like 70 jabs, by the time you're, a teenager. Okay. And I don't know if I can unequivocally state this, because I don't know, there may have been some valid scientific research done, but I'm pretty confident there has not been a placebo double-blind study, the gold science on these the dangers of these things for safety on vaccines since probably the polio vaccine. I do not believe there has been ever any research done that would state, okay, we went through the hoops on this to do it. So you say, well, we don't know they cause why they cause autism, but the fact of the matter is we've never tested it. And the
well, no, because we don't want to test it, because if we do,
exactly.
We might find out the truth.
Exactly, and that's the problem. And I know personally, many people, that the mothers, you listen to the mothers, that they're closest to their kids, and they can unequivocally state that these disastrous medical problems happened right after the vaccine session that they did with their doctor for a wellness baby check. Baby was doing fine.
Yeah, but what you do is you mock, you ridicule mom, you silence her, and you know, do whatever you can for her. And then if it gets really bad, you move her into vaccine court, which is all bottled up and kept silent, and you might give her a stipend to shut up. I mean, that's really what we see, ladies and gentlemen. All I can tell you is RFK Jr. standing up and saying, hey, we're going to change the guidance on the CDC that explains we don't know if they cause vaccines or not. I think it's a start. I think it's a truth-telling statement. And I think that we need to now then say, okay, well, if that's true, what does it take to verify this more? And it's going to require a lot of testing and everything else. They're going to fight against that tooth and nail. But at least somebody's doing something somewhere, doctor, that I find to be good news.
I agree completely, and I applaud the effort. And I look at what happened with this COVID con jab. Rush to market. I mean, Operation Warp Speed. Where did that come from? Well, Donald Trump. Fact of the matter is, we marshaled forces against it. We got it to the market, and anybody that is not living under a rock has to understand that we have had a disastrous result from that. And it probably, most of the studies I've read say that it caused more problems than the disease it was supposed to counteract.
Well, the proof in the pudding is the Vaccine Injury Compensation Fund. That wouldn't have been necessary if there wasn't so many problems. Fact and point. Go look at 1986, Vaccine Injury Compensation Fund. Dr. Bradley, thanks so much to you and your family. A happy Thanksgiving. That's freedomsrisingsun.com. I'm Sam Bushman, syndicated by Loving Liberty Networks, lovingliberty.net. Spread the word, share the love, and God save the Republic of the United States of America.